Hello everybody and welcome to Edgeshed. Today we are going to be taking another look at Total War Warhammer. Don't forget that there's videos like this out every Wednesday, and yeah, make sure to subscribe and check back then for sort of more Total War Warhammer content. Now in this video we're going to be taking a look at the greenskins, so the orcs and the goblins, and this is going to be a very brief sort of overview of the orcs and goblins, of the greenskins, and we're not going to go into too much detail on any of the individual units, and if I'm being honest, there may be some units that we don't speak about in this because there's a lot of variation in the greenskin army that isn't noteworthy really. It's minor variations to different stats and skills, and I will point them out, but and I'll let you know what units are like this, but generally we'll just cover the main units and the bulk of the forces and sort of a general play style for them. Okay, so obviously the greenskins contain orcs and goblins, greenskin creatures, and one of the key things to note about the greenskins is this difference. It may seem obvious, but it's something that is a key mechanic, certainly in the campaign mode, and somewhat on multiplayer, where you can buy lots of very cheap expendable goblins just to flesh out an army, just to bulk it up. You can generally build your main force of orcs. That's certainly what I try to do, and then with the spare change I will flesh it out with some goblin ranks just to harry and harass the enemies. Now while the greenskins are very flexible, a lot like the Empire, they do sort of lack the artillery that the Empire has, and they also lack the strength of cavalry. The cavalry isn't quite as good, but what they lack in these things they make up for with their melee infantry. Now you've got some quite weak melee infantry such as goblins, and you can have goblins with spears, and you've got night goblins and night goblin fanatics who will occasionally come out wielding chains and do all sorts of crazy things. But in my opinion, one of the things you want to make up this army of is just the orcs and the orc big uns. The savage orcs and the black orcs are fantastic. They're very thickly armoured, they've got fantastic leadership, and they do monstrous amounts of damage. So as I say, you've got the three different types of goblins really for melee infantry, and then you've got 5 different variations on the orcs. Now quite a few of them it's just general increases in armor and improvements, but with the final 2 tiers you've got sort of the savage orc big uns and the black orcs, and these are the 2 that are really going to be the most devastating when it comes to fights, and going to be what you wanted to use to actually try and break the enemy in points. I've in certain strategies that I've got, I will use the black orcs on the flank to collapse a flank of an enemy and try and sort of roll them up using the black orcs. Now the missile infantry that the orcs have available to them are archers of various different types. You've got goblin archers, night goblin archers, orc archers, and savage orc archers. And that is in the order that I've just listed them. That's sort of the general progression of improvement for the quality of the archering that they shall be doing and the range damage that they will be inflicting. In general, between the night goblin archers and the orc archers, the difference in price, I would go for the orc archers because they're going to do a lot more damage and they do significantly more armor piercing. With goblin archers you do tend to find that they cannot get through thick armor, so if you've got any sort of Empire knights or people with shields, then they're just not effective, you know. They're great if you're up against zombies. Throw a load of goblin archers at them, they'll kill them before they ever get to your ranks, but when it comes to things that with a much thicker, tougher skin, they're just not capable of getting through that armor, so that's something that you really need to bear in mind. Looking at the mounts looking at the cavalry that the orcs have available to them, you've got some missile cavalry to start with, and you've got the goblin spider riders and the goblin wolf riders. I believe the Wolf Riders are quicker, but they're also more expensive, so I would generally lean towards the Spider Riders, because it's enough that they can run away from melee infantry and still harry and harass them. And they're a very cheap unit to put into that role of just harrying and harassing people. And they can be deployed in the vanguard, so it means that you can get them right up close to the enemy, and from the moment the battle begins, they're going to start being a pain and a nuisance, and will hopefully goad your enemy into trying to respond to them, and therefore break their formation and ranks. Now, the melee cavalry that is available is you've got some Goblin Spider Riders and Goblin Wolf Riders. In general, I would avoid these like the plague, because you're going to charge them into anything and they're going to get eaten up. They're just not a very good unit. They can be used for really crap units, and I don't know, maybe just to pester and annoy the enemy, but in my opinion, not really worth it. Then the rest of them, you've got the Orc Boar Boys, the Savage Orc Boar Boys, the Orc Boar Boys Big Uns, and the Savage Orc Boar Boys Big Uns, which is a real mouthful to say. And that's again the order of sort of progression with them. They'll increase in cost for each of them. A lot of the time, I'm perfectly happy just taking in the Orc Boar Boys. The improvement for the Savage Orc Boar Boys is barely noticeable. A lot of the times with cavalry, the thing that you want from it is the charge bonus, and that doesn't really change for them. It does slightly. But then the actual ability to fight and engage is the thing that's really improved between the Orc Boar Boys and the Savage Orc Boar Boys. But I think if you're just careful with the choice of engagement you run them into, the Orc Boar Boys will often be a more value for money alternative to the Savage Orc Boar Boys. But I suppose a lot of it will depend on situation, and is probably something that I'm going to have to cover in a lot more detail in further videos. Okay, so now we've got the monsters of varying types, and these are really useful. You've got the Acronoc Spider, the Giants, and the Trolls. Now, the Acronoc Spider is one of my favourite units in the game currently. I will, even in battles where the funds are limited, I will still take one with me, because it is so good, and it is good at chewing through armour and chewing up enemy heroes, and you put it on a flank and it is going to go through the enemy flank, and it's going to cause them to collapse and fold. So I really think that that's something that you need in an army. The Giants, I'm not a big fan of. Now, there's two reasons for this. They don't tend to have as much armour piercing, but they will do a lot more splash damage if you want to get them engaged in sort of large units of infantry, so they do have a use there. But the weird thing that I really dislike about them is if the Empire or Dwarves start firing just regular cannons at them, they can get stuck in an animation loop where they're like trying to pick themselves up off the ground. And not stuck as in broke, I mean they'll pick themselves up off the ground and then they'll get hit by another cannonball, fall back over, and they just get stuck miles behind the rest of your army. So by the time they reach the battle, it's over. If as I say, the enemy you're up against is using sufficient artillery to keep them pinned down. So for that reason, it's not something I like when I'm attacking. I want my line to remain intact when I get to them, and that's the main reason I don't sort of take them with us. Now, the Trolls, which are monstrous melee infantry, so really and truly these fill a similar role to sort of like orcs, but they're much trollier than orcs. They're very good at fighting. They're a very tough melee unit and can be used, or I tend to keep them back a lot of the time because they're no good trying to make a line out of them because there's only a handful of trolls in each unit of trolls. So I'll use them to reinforce points where it's waning or where I've got an enemy that I really need to remove from the battlefield. I'll use them to move in and do that extra bit of damage to take them out there. Now, looking at the vehicles that we've got access to, we've got Goblin Wolf Chariots and Orc Boar Chariots. This is one of the few times where I'm going to say that the Goblin units are better in my opinion. I don't know if they are faster moving, but they certainly feel it, and they will still do fantastic charge damage. You run them into an enemy, and you'll cleave through them, you'll smash through the line, you'll come out on the other side of them, and then what I've had done in the past is with two different units of Goblin Wolf Chariots, I'll have one charging them as the other retreats, and then that one will recharge them, and you get stuck or the enemy gets stuck in this situation where they are permanently being charged by these chariots, and the unit gets decimated very, very quickly. And that's something that I found really useful to use these for. The Orc Boar Chariots, they can be used in the same way, but I just don't think value for money wise they're as needed as the Goblin, or they're as much value for money as the Goblin Wolf Chariots. Now, the artillery that the Greenskins have got access to is not fantastic. You've got rock lobbers, which lob rocks. And then you've got Doom Diver catapults, which are incredibly fun. They're quite effective, in fairness. They do a lot of damage, but it's still not as good as mortars and fell cannons and things like that. They're fantastic fun though. And ultimately, we do play video games to have fun. So, for that reason, Doom Diver catapults are definitely something that I enjoy, and I'm very glad are in the game. So, that pretty much sums up this video. I appreciate that even more so than perhaps the other just overview guides. This has been very a loose look at the different units, but that's because there seems to be so many for the Greenskins, and certain tactics within the Greenskin army are going to need a much more detailed breakdown in further videos, and they will be coming every Wednesday. So hit the subscribe button if you want more information about the Goblin Greenskin army. And until then, take care.